Welcome back. I wanted to do a video explaining some of the little details and other things about this. I call it the NCU50 Honda Express because it's a NU50 engine on an NC50 frame. And we've got a low battery. Well, I guess we'll have to keep this relatively short. We'll do this in installments. And other people have done this, so, you know, it's not new ground. But it was new ground for me, and I learned a lot, and I thought I'd try to share some of that with you guys. If you've, well, let's put it this way. Building this from the ground up was a huge learning experience for me. I had to overcome several problems, and I'll try to go over those, or at least some of them here. If you've been following my videos, you might have seen that I purchased an NU50 Iowa engine, Urban Express engine, with the rear tire, thankfully. And I got it running, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with it. And then I remembered I had this Honda Express frame hanging up in the shed, and really the only other thing I had was the forks, which were not on it at the time, or the front shock, whatever you want to call it. And so I was like, well, why don't I just put it on this express frame? And I guess the first lesson I learned was I should have gone out and just bought a beat up or a parts Honda Express for 100, 150 bucks. They were out there. They're still out there. You can find them. And so that would have been a lot less expensive than individually buying the parts that I needed on eBay. So even though I had the frame and forks, I was still missing a ton of stuff. And I just ordered a Urban Express speedometer. So, you know, this nickeled and dimed me to death. It was very expensive. Of course, I've gone above and beyond just, you know, a running bike, and I added things like the Molossi gears and some other things. But, you know, I probably got close to $1,000 into this because, you know, it seems hard to believe, but it just nickels and dimes you to death. And I should have got a complete Honda Express, but then, you know, I probably wouldn't have want to have done it because I would have probably just wanted to get the Honda Express running. That's just kind of the way I am. But, well, whatever. Live and learn, right? So if anybody has the half notion to do this, and you've got an Urban engine, which are hard to come by. You can get Honda Express engines on eBay left and right, but rarely do you see Urban Express engines come up, and when they do, people want the world, you know, for them. It's ridiculously expensive. But I'll give you some examples of some expenses that actually I saved on. Those handlebars, I forget what year Express they're from. An early year, because there's no turn signal function on them. That front wheel is from 82 or 83 Express, and I learned the hard way that I'd already bought a hub from a 77 or 78 Express, a front hub, but in 82 and 83 they went to a bigger front hub. So my purchase of an earlier front hub was not going to work. And of course, the advantage of the bigger front hub is I assume the brakes are different and you have more braking area. I could be wrong. And then I had an Urban Express headlight bucket without the front bezel or the front frame and without a light, a beam. I was originally going to go with that because you have all kinds of room to hide wiring in. However, I would have had to buy a new beam, sealed beam, because I didn't have anything, not even a non-working beam. That was $45. And then that front bezel frame would have been another $30 shipped. There's not many of those on eBay, and you've got to, I guess I could have gotten any color and painted it black, but for a black one, it was like $30. So $75 just to get a working headlight out of the whole deal. So I found that headlight on Treatland for $25, $26, and made it work. I've got to hide the wiring, but the one thing I learned was what a difference a different headlight can give to the look of a bike. So I was kind of happy with that turned out, or how that turned out. I'll work on the wiring, and you can't see it under there, but I had an extra horn. I got the horn with the Urban Express engine, and then I had an extra horn, so I've actually hooked up. You can kind of see both horns under the headlight. I've got dual horns. I was just bored, so whatever. And then I hooked up the headlight with some hardware store parts, attached it to where the old headlight attaches, and so I saved a little money there. The cables were real pain in the butt. Although I had a lot of experience with working with different cables on the Express and the Urban Express. And the rear brake cable is actually a QT50 rear brake cable, which worked out pretty much perfectly. After I corrected where the rear shock attaches in the back, on the back of that mounting point, there's a little like pressure plate that holds the rear brake cable, runs through and holds the, if you have an Urban Express, look at this, it holds the brake cable firm and motionless against the back of the CVT, the transmission case. And my rear brake cable kept slipping, and I basically just added a spacer between the pressure plate and the cable and tightened it up and got it to where it wouldn't slip anymore, and that fixed that. And then the front brake cable is a regular Express front brake cable that I had Treatland has them cheap. And then the throttle cable, these are all secrets of the trade that I'm spilling. This is all valuable information. You may not realize it, but the throttle cable is actually a QT50 throttle cable, which works perfectly in this application as well as on the regular Express. So if you're looking for a Honda Express throttle cable, now I guess I shouldn't say that it'll work on every Express across the line, because as we've already learned, Honda changed things up, especially in 82 and 83. So those are some of the issues on the front side. I'm going to add a speedometer. I found a relatively cheap Urban Express speedometer for like $18, free shipping, allegedly. Let's take a closer look, and you can see what I did with some other stuff here. Actually, we'll get in even closer because I want to look. You see, I've got the ignition coil. That was an extra ignition coil I received with a QT50 I bought, so it was laying around. I wasn't sure if the ignition coil, because it was made for a 6-volt bike, I wasn't sure if that was going to be a problem, but it has not turned out to be a problem, because the Urban Express engine is a 12-volt, it puts out 12 volts, and the Express has all these 6-volt accessories, and by the way, that's a 12-volt headlight. And then normally on the Express, the ignition coil is mounted under the seat, runs through the frame, down that frame tube, and then connects to the spark plug. This ignition coil was not long enough to do that, so I ended up mounting it with a bolt that was already there, kind of QT50 style, on the side of the engine. I had to shorten the ignition coil cable and ran it underneath the frame and through there, and it's holding on real tight. It's got a bolt that threads into the engine, and I've also added a nut to the back of it. I was afraid that vibrations would loosen that, but it is held firm. It hasn't loosened at all, and so that that worked out well. Let me move it out some so we can see the carburetor. See how much time I can get recording here. We'll move in closer. So I've also deleted the oil pump. I had a block-off plate that it was laying around that I'd never used on my other Urban Express. So I popped it in there. And then that is an SHA clone carburetor I got for like 15 bucks. With that Urban Express adapter, MLM adapter between the intake and the carburetor. I wonder if we can get even closer. We can. And the nice thing about mounting an Urban Express engine on an Express frame is all of this is easy to get to. I mean, you can normally on an Urban Express, getting to the carburetor is just a pain in the butt. Getting to the oil pump is a challenge. You know, all that is tucked up underneath there, and it is hard to get to. The great thing about this is I've really opened it up, and everything is super easy to get to. And by the way, adding the Urban Express back half to this Honda Express lengthened the bike probably 6 inches. I haven't measured it, but it's considerably longer, so you have a longer wheelbase, probably a little more stability. And then of course that's the MLM People's Pipe for the Urban Express, going on an Urban Express engine, so no problems there. I had that extra laying around and put it on there. Now I'm not the biggest fan of the MLM People's Express pipe on the Urban Express. Getting this thing to hit like it should has been a challenge, and it's still not doing that. Now it works better with a bigger top end like the DR kit.